Good. All right, so here we go. Can you all hear me online okay? Thumbs up? Yep, thank you. So what we're going to talk about tonight is this book from Mumonkan. I'm going to talk about koans. This is something that I have not read for quite some time, and I'm actually really enjoying going back and looking at it. This has a book from 13th century China, and it has 48 koans in it. So my intention over what will probably end up being quite a long while is to work through this whole book fairly slowly. I'll intersperse it with other stuff because I think everybody will kind of get a little fed up if we just do nothing but koans for several months. But that's what we're going to do. So tonight, what we'll do is we'll get started. There's a little bit of an introduction here, and then the first koan is one that most or all of you have heard of, which is Joshu's Mu. Does a dog have Buddha nature? Mu. So we'll talk through that one. First, though, background on koans and what they are and what they are not. So they're mysterious things, and there is a lot of mystique wrapped around them that makes them sound even more strange than they really are. Charlie gave a class on koans on Saturday, and she did that really out of the Soto Zen tradition. And koans are used in that tradition in a lot of ways, and they're used conversationally and in discussion forums and practice groups. And they're very rich and really valuable. And there is an important point there, which is there are a lot of different ways of working with koans. There is no right or wrong way to work with koans. Koans are these stories, these typically pithy exchanges between enlightened individuals or an enlightened individual and a student, which are gateways and doors into the truth. And by working closely, becoming intimate with the koan, it can help us open up into that truth. So that's what they're about. And as long as our practice is pushing us in that direction, it's not right, it's not wrong. The root out of which they come, though, is where I'm going to go to and where I'm going to really focus as I'm working through this book, which is the way they are. It's the predecessor of how they're currently used in the Rinzai school. So they are living expressions of what is called satori, which is a direct experience of transcending duality. And it'll become clearer quite what that means as we talk through this particular koan and the next one as well. So we'll get to that, but it's, duality is subject-object, non-duality is subject and object merging, but when we make that move intellectually, and we normally make that move intellectually, we tend to do so in a way that simply sets up another duality. It's a duality between no subject, no object, and the world as we normally saw it. But the move is to transcend that, and that's what will become hopefully clearer as we get into this, because it really is, there's no subject, there's no object. It's just as it is. So foundational to this is we already live in that state of truth. We are just unaware of it. And we are constantly struggling to wake up to it, but we're doing so very unskillfully. So when we go out and get drunk and lose our inhibitions, that's a move in this direction. When we go and do acid, that's a move in this direction. When we go parachuting, paragliding, that's a move in this direction. It's all, we know we want to be happy, and in our deep selves we know that this sack of skin and bones, this sense of self-other, this world in which we want to achieve things and let things go, the sense of birth and death, all of this is in the way, all of this is an obstacle to happiness. In our deep heart, we know that that is a fabrication. So these are all moves to leave that fabrication behind. So the koan becomes a substitute for that, or it becomes not a substitute, it becomes a very sharp lens that focuses that doubt, that anxiety, that existential angst. And it becomes a fulcrum that really concentrates this existential angst. So when working with a koan, the practitioner is admonished to become one with the koan. And by becoming one, it really is to just take the koan then becomes not a set of metaphors, it's not a story, it doesn't have symbols in it. It is an embodiment of this truth. And by becoming one with the koan, we simply become this truth. We sink ourselves into it, and we leave everything else behind. And all that's left is this truth of non-duality. And we become that truth. And that becomes this profound awakening experience. So that's koans. So now I'm going to pick up the book and I'm going to start reading from it. The Mumonkan actually is not this big. This is 360 pages long. It's probably 100 pages. But this is a commentary on it. This commentary is by Shibayama, who back in the day was one of the senior figures in the Japanese Rinzai Zen tradition. This has for many years been my very favorite commentary. I recently came across, or it was recommended to me, a commentary by Albert Lowe, and I really like Albert Lowe as well. And I've just started reading this, and this is also very good. And there's just, it's years since I read koans very much, and there are so many good commentaries out there now, so many more than there used to be. So you can have a lot of fun reading up on these. But the core Mumonkan is much shorter than this. So, where are we going to start here? We begin with a preface. This is a preface by a successor to Mumon, who is the guy who pulled this together, Wumen. And what it says is if it is explained as no gate, everybody on earth will enter through it. If it is explained that there is a gate, our dear master did not have to choose such a title in the first place. This is like squeezing the sap out of dried up bamboo and putting it on a children's book. Throw it away without waiting for me to do so. So when you read the Chinese Chan stuff around these koans, it's really opaque because it's so stylized and very different from the way we look at the world. But if you get into the flow of it, it really is devastatingly direct, and it really is very clear. So if it is explained as no gate, everybody on earth will go through it. So that's saying if there's no gate, we wouldn't have this angst in the first place. We'd all know we were awakened. We'd be free, totally free. If it's explained that there is a gate, our dear master did not have to choose such a title in the first place. So we're getting stuck on, is there a gate, isn't there a gate? If there's a gate, there's something to go through, and there's an obstacle. But there really is no obstacle, we're just making it up. And then throw it away without waiting for me to do so. This is really that same point about there actually is no obstacle. We have a habit of just making stuff up and sticking it in our way and making life difficult. And the exercise is about letting all of that go. And when we merge with the koan, there's nothing left. We've left everything behind. All we are is that koan we've merged with. So Mumonkan in his preface is basically the same thing. If it's gateless, how can you pass through it? Have you not heard that nothing that enters by the gate can be the family treasure? What is causally gained is always subject to change. I want to also note the traditional way that the Rinzai Zen folks work with these koans is they take them on and they will end up reducing, as they become one with the koan, as they start working with the koan, it generally reduces to a very short phrase or even a single word. This koan will reduce to just the single word mu. And so you basically sit with that word mu, which embodies the whole koan. The guy who assembled this sat with mu for 6 years before he had his satori, he had his awakening experience. Hakuin, who is a 17th century Rinzai, very famous Rinzai practitioner in Japan, who revitalized the whole koan practice among other things. He was a remarkable man and a prolific artist as well, visual artist. He also sat with mu for 6 years. So this is serious work. This is a serious practice of concentration, of letting go, of focus to do this. Alright. So now I'll get into the koan. I'll read the koan again, and then I will talk about the koan, and then I'll read Mumon's commentary on the koan and talk about his commentary, and then we'll break and discuss it. So the koan is a monk once asked Master Joshu, has a dog the Buddha nature or not? Joshu said, mu. So mu is, in Chinese it's wu, it means no. But it also, it's a broader meaning, and it can also just mean a broader negation. Mu is the Japanese translation. So, Master Joshu is, he apparently died when he was 120 in the 790 or something CE. Really remarkable guy. The monastery that he was abbot of was high up on a mountain in central China. It had holes in the wall. It was just, it was really, really rustic, shall we say. The monk, a monk who was coming to practice with Joshu, a monk who was coming to ask Joshu a question, would have been a really serious practitioner. This is somebody who had committed his life, as Buddha did, to saying, there's a truth out there, and I'm going to find it and wake up, or I am going to die trying. This is my life mission. This is the only thing that matters to me. So the person asking Joshu this question isn't doing it casually over a cup of coffee. He knows Joshu is a great and revered master of the time. He has gone to see Joshu. He's not going to waste his time. He's not going to waste his time or Joshu's time. This is a question that crystallizes the meaning of life and death for this monk. This is it. Has a dog Buddha nature or not? It is axiomatic to the Zen tradition that everything has Buddha nature. All sentient beings have Buddha nature. People would argue about whether non-sentient beings have Buddha nature, but all sentient beings have Buddha nature, and a dog has Buddha nature, according to that definition. A dog is, at the time, a grungy creature. It's like we'd regard a rat or a possum today. So, but it still has Buddha nature, right? But Joshu said mu. Why would he do that? He's this incredibly wise monk. He's been practicing for 50, 70 years. He's revered. He is profoundly compassionate. He wants to help people wake up. He's had this desperate monk come see him, ask for help. and asks him the slam dunk questions: is the dog Buddha nature? Because if the master confirms that, the master's confirming he's got Buddha nature, of course. He says moo. Why does he say moo? So one of the things that happens in a koan, and this gets to the duality we set up when we make the move from dualism to non-dualism, the duality we set up has a contradiction built in it. So we've got the relative and the absolute is language we use. There's a contradiction in there because they don't lay neatly on top of each other. You have to hold both. You have to hold that contradiction without it being a contradiction, which is moving beyond the contradiction, which is the true non-duality. So the koan, each koan will set that dynamic up. It will set up an internal tension. The internal tension here is everything has Buddha nature, but Joshu's saying a dog doesn't. How is this helping the monk? So now I'll read the commentary, and I'll just talk about it a little bit as I go through the commentary. In studying Zen, one must pass the barriers set up by ancient Zen masters. For the attainment of incomparable satori, one has to cast away the discriminating mind. There's a reference here that I'll pull out in this book. He's got his own his own translation of the Diamond Sutra, or segments of the Diamond Sutra. The Diamond Sutra was a text that all of these dudes would have been familiar with, and they pretty much are all dudes in these koans. They would have all been familiar with this. And it's the text that Huineng, who was the sixth patriarch in China, was reading when he heard it being read when he woke up. The relevant segment runs thus. Therefore, Subhuti, the Bodhisattva, the great being, should produce a thought of utmost right and perfect enlightenment. Unsupported by form should a thought be produced. Unsupported by sounds, smells, tastes, touchables, or mind objects should a thought be produced. Unsupported by dharmas should a thought be produced. Unsupported by anything should a thought be produced. This is the key line here. A bodhisattva should arouse the mind without resting it upon anything. Arouse the mind without resting it upon anything. That is normally translated as arouse the mind that does not rest on anything, which would sound like a different mind. So I actually kind of like this translation because again, there's a difference there and yet it's the same thing. Arouse the mind without resting it upon anything. We talk about this as the mind, but minds do words, minds do logic, minds discriminate. So in that sense, what we're talking about really isn't mind as we relate to it. It's more like the heart, as in the shing or the chitta, heart-mind. The heart and the mind is like a concatenated thing. Hearts don't do words, they do answers, they do feelings. But that's not quite right either. But I bring that out to just say, using the word mind can take us off into the wrong place. If we look at the Pali Canon, there's a sutta that many of you will also know, where Buddha says, and he's talking about consciousness, and the light I'm about to talk about is consciousness. When the light shines through a window, where does it land? It lands on the far wall, Lord. If there is no wall, where does it land? It lands on the ground. If there's no ground, where does it land? The water. If there's no water, where does it land? It does not land. Consciousness that does not land. Consciousness without surface. Same thing as the mind that does not dwell. This is what we're pointing at. One has to cast away the discriminating mind. There is still awareness. This is not black nothing. It just doesn't land. Those who have not passed the barrier and have not cast away the discriminating mind are all phantoms haunting trees and plants. If we start discriminating, we're creating cells, we're creating identities, we're creating stories, we're creating phantoms. And those phantoms are haunting the very things that we're creating. Now tell me, what is the barrier of the Zen masters? Just this mu. It is the barrier of Zen. It is thus called the gateless barrier of Zen. Because mu is also reality. It's the gate and reality. Those who have passed the barrier will not only see Joshu clearly, but will go hand in hand with all the masters of the past, see them face to face. This sounds like hyperbole. It is not. The awakened mind recognizes the awakened mind. The awakened mind literally sees itself in the awakened mind. Two awakened minds meeting see no separation. They are the same thing. This is also written of in other places as tangling eyebrows with the masters of the past. You will see with the same eye that they see with, and hear with the same ear. Same point. Wouldn't it be wonderful? It would be complete freedom, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be wonderful? Don't you want to pass the barrier? Then concentrate yourself into this move with your 360 bones and 84,000 pores, making your whole body one great inquiry. Day and night, work intently at it. So this is saying, focus exclusively on this, and what happens, it becomes, in a sense, it becomes obsessive, but the idea is you're leaving everything behind so that all that is left is this living expression of non-duality. You are the living expression of this non-duality. It's like having bolted a red-hot iron ball. You try to vomit it but cannot. You're stuck. No way forward, no way backwards. What do you do? This is also the middle way that Buddha talked about. It's avoiding the extremes, which is not a compromise between the two. It's something completely different. Not veering towards the extreme of existence, not veering towards the extreme of non-existence. In the Kaccayana Sutta, non-existence, not the extreme of non-existence, and then he lists the 12 steps of dependent causation and then undoes the 12 steps of dependent causation. It's a totally different approach. So you can't vomit it, you can't swallow it. What do you do with it? Something completely different. Cast away your illusory discriminating knowledge and consciousness accumulated up to now and keep on working harder. After a while, when your efforts come to fruition, all the oppositions, such as in and outs, will naturally be identified. You will then be like a dumb person who has had a wonderful dream. He only knows it personally within himself. It is inexpressible. The dumb person can't say anything. And it's a deeply intimate, personal thing. There's no way of sharing it. There's this explosion of awakening. But it's the whole universe, and yet it's entirely intimate. Suddenly you break through the barrier. You will astonish heaven and shake the earth. This all sounds very grandiose stuff, but in every tradition where the Buddhist teachings show up, this is what Buddha was teaching. He wasn't saying we can make our lives a little bit better. If that's what he was teaching, he would have stopped long before he reached the Bodhi tree. He had a couple of great teachers who made his life a whole lot better. That wasn't what he wanted. He wanted complete freedom. So he kept going. And when he came back to teach, his conundrum wasn't, he didn't say, oh, I've found a way to make people's lives better, I can go teach them that. He said, I have found a way to give people complete freedom, but I don't know how to teach that. So that's why he struggled, and that's why he did not immediately return to teach. This is what Buddha was teaching, how to completely wake up. It is as if you have snatched the great sword of General Khan, who was a great Chinese warrior. You kill the Buddha if you meet him. You kill the ancient masters if you meet them. And of course this is not, stick a sword in their heart and you watch puddles of blood fall on the floor. But it is saying, when you meet the Buddha, there is no Buddha. There's no not Buddha either, but there's no Buddha. On the brink of life and death, you are utterly free. And in the 6 realms and the 4 modes of life, the 6 realms are devas, titans, humans, hungry ghosts and the like, and the 4 modes are birth by womb, by transmutation, by egg, and I forget the 4th one, by live birth, I guess. So it's whatever mode of existence you may have, with great joy and a genuine life in complete freedom. Now, how should one strive? With might and main work at this mu and be mu. If you do not stop or waver in your striving, then behold, when the Dharma candle is lighted, darkness is at once enlightened. That's pointing at, once the light goes on, that is a qualitative change. We're walking around in darkness, we're walking around asleep. When the waking up happens, it may just be a faint glimmer, it may not be a profound waking, but the light goes on. That's qualitative. Suddenly you can see. You keep practicing. You may get a couple of extra candles, you may get a flashlight, you may get a bonfire, the light gets brighter. That's quantitative, but the qualitative change has already happened. It can get stronger, but that initial, this is why Satori is such a big deal in Zen, that initial waking up, that initial, oh, I'm not human. And yet here I am. So there's a 4-line verse that finishes this off. The dog, the Buddha nature, that's the conundrum. Right there, first line. The dog, the Buddha nature. Does it have it? Does it not? Yes, no. Unanswerable. The truth is manifest in full. Seeing the truth. A moment of yes and no. Just a hair's breadth of difference between it, just that little crack, that little bit of discriminating mind. A moment of yes and no, lost to your body and soul. Just a hair's breadth gap, just a hair's breadth difference opens up the gap between heaven and earth. So that's, there are books out there that give answers to koans. Not very useful, because yeah, sure you can answer them, but when you read an answer, you're answering it in your head. The commentaries, the good commentaries, what they will do is they will help you frame the question so you have a better understanding of what the koan is embodying and how to hold and approach the koan. They will give you a better sense of how to move into being the koan. I in the past have talked of koans as being a technology, and I realise now that's actually not right, because they're actually not a technology. If we use them as a technology, we're kind of missing a point. The koan is something that we actually become. So the really good commentaries and the really good teachers with koans will help you move into becoming the koan, because when you become the koan, you leave everything else behind, and that takes you to this place where you just transcend duality. And all right, so that's a lot of talking from me. I will stop, and we will probably be a couple of weeks before we do another one of these, but we will keep going through this book.